I'm Tom Hellie. I'm president of Linfield College. I have been since 2006. I first heard of Linfield College about 20 years ago or so when I was reading an article in the Wine Spectator, and it talked about the International Pinot Noir celebration, which was held at this little college in Oregon. And quite literally, that's the first time I ever heard of Linfield. When I came here from Chicago, many of my friends in Chicago accused me of having chosen to take this job because of IPNC. And although that was not true, strictly speaking, I certainly was interested because of IPNC. I've been interested in wine and especially in Pinot Noir for many years. And I think, irrespective of that personal interest, I think that IPNC is a terrific thing for Linfield College. And it's something that we've already benefited from and will benefit from even more in the future.
Mm-hmm. So when was the first time you actually attended IPNC?
It was the summer of 2006. I had been here for about 3 months. I was informed that I was to give the welcome at IPNC, and I thought that that was a pretty cool thing. And when I got up and talked, I quoted a Greek philosopher, I'm afraid I don't remember which one, who equated wine and love, and I urged everyone to understand what he had meant over the course of the weekend. And I think people were convinced at that point that I was one of them. And so, and I thoroughly enjoyed the weekend. But over the last 5 years now that I've been able to attend, I've also found it to be the case that we have many people who attend IPNC who have come many times, 10 times, 20 times. There's even at least one person who's been here for every one. And for them, in a funny way, Linfield has become their college for at least one weekend every year. They know about the college, they talk to me about the changes that they've seen happening here. It's really become their place. And that, I think, is quite a wonderful thing, and it reflects the sense of community that has built up around this event.
Why don't you talk a little bit more about that community, because that's one of the things that I think comes out in almost all of the interviews, whether it's with the volunteers or with the winery owners, is that there is this partnership, this sense of community that arises out of this singular event.
Well, I think that one of the things that many of us believe about wine and food, for that matter, about meals, is that we build community sometimes around and with food and drink. And the people who come here share a passion, and it is truly a passion for great wine, and especially great Pinot Noir. And so that in itself makes them a kind of virtual community. They come from all over the world, but they already share this thing. I think, though, that for those who come back again and again, they see each other here every year. They catch up on what's been happening with their families or with their careers. And there's a wonderful story that I heard last year after the IPNC. Brad Sin, who's the director of auxiliary services and buildings and grounds at Linfield, reported this. But he had been helping out in transporting some of the attendees back to their housing. And it was after the salmon bake, the second night of IPNC, he gave a ride to an elderly gentleman and his granddaughter. And he learned as they drove back to the dorm where they were staying that this man's wife had died the previous year, and that they had attended IPNC many times, and it was something that they had loved to do together and had shared together. And of course he was very sad and even devastated by her death, and had just assumed that he would never go to IPNC again because he didn't want to go alone. And then his granddaughter came to him and said, you know, you've always talked about this event, and I've always been curious about coming, and would you be willing to take me along? And he told Brad that night that they had already signed up to come back again this year because they'd had such a wonderful time together. And he was so thrilled that even though he no longer had his wife to share this experience with, he could now share it with his granddaughter. I think a wonderful story, and really just an example of the kind of commitment and sense of community that people feel about this event.
One of the things that has been discussed a lot is the idea that it's a celebration, and that they've sort of strayed away from other terms such as competitions or tastings even. Can you reflect on how you see this as a celebration?
Well, it's interesting. I think I certainly agree that it's not a competition, and I think that to some extent, though, it is a seminar, and that's something that's lost on people who haven't participated, because you learn a lot about Pinot Noir and about winemaking and about wine growing and about not only Oregon but other parts of the world that this wine is made. As a celebration, I think it's a celebration in that ultimately, especially in the evening meals, there's just this sense of joy in having learned and experienced together this wonderful wine matched with really terrific food, and this great sense of pleasure in being with people who also understand it and revel in it in the same way that you do. So yes, there is celebration.
How do you view also the international, quality to this? I know you've traveled a lot also to other winemaking regions, and how does that international quality and the term that's being used also fit in?
I think that's a key difference between our event and many of the other events that are held around the United States. And one of the things that I'm struck by is especially the Burgundians, how much they enjoy coming here, and how much they tell me how impressed they are by our campus and about by our community, by our students. And I think that international component of this really does make it more of a celebration, less of a competition, and less of an Oregon thing. It's one of the things that really distinguishes us, in that, yes, about half of the wineries or wines poured are coming from Oregon, but the rest are coming from all over the world. And the people who are pouring them are the people who make them. That is a pretty remarkable thing. And many of them want to come back, and some of them do. And it's because they've had such a great time together. And in part it's because they're charmed by this place. I've had at least 2 Frenchmen tell me that they're going to send their kids here to college because they think it's such a terrific place.
Why don't you talk a little bit about Linfield's relationship to IPNC? There's obviously the historical part, but then also how you see it, changing over time. So I don't know if you want to address maybe that early period that you know of.
I don't know. I've been president here for 6 years, and this will be the 25th anniversary. So obviously there were a lot of years before I came in which this event was held on our campus. I've talked a little bit to previous presidents and trustees about it, but not a lot. My sense is that when this was first proposed, the college did it partly because they would make a little bit of money, but maybe primarily because it was something that the town of McMinnville and Yamhill County wanted. And we at Linfield, or they at Linfield, saw it as a way to be good partners. Now, over time, I think it's taken on much greater meaning for the college. Increasingly, we have students who are interested in going into the wine business. We've had students who have graduated from Linfield and gone on to become winemakers, to own wineries, and especially to work in the business side of wine. And they're not only in Oregon now, but they're in California and Washington, and we've even had Linfield alumni go to France to learn more about and to work in the wine business. So there is a kind of job relationship there. What I think is also very exciting, and maybe even more exciting now, is the opportunity that our students have to learn about the history of the Oregon wine business and the creation of the Oregon wine industry. Thanks to what we've been able to do, and thanks you've been able to do, really, and what we've been able to do with the Linfield Center for the Northwest, I think now we're developing some academic programs and projects that really connect very well what Linfield is as a liberal arts institution and what this whole wine industry is. And it's very exciting for our future. I see us having all kinds of partnerships. We already have some, and I'm hoping that we're going to have many more. And I'm hoping that this will ultimately become a place, Linfield will, where people who are interested in learning more about wine, not necessarily as students, but scholars, and practitioners, that they will come here to look at the resources that we've accumulated in the library and in the Linfield Center for the Northwest, and then of course for our students themselves to do research on those materials and to have internships in the community.
You also mentioned the exchange of ideas. How have you benefited personally? You and I have gone around and talked with some of the winery folks, and you obviously have come to know a lot more about wine over the years. How has IPNC contributed to that in terms of what have you taken away personally, and what
Oh man, I mean, first of all, I've met people who I'd only read about before and never imagined that I would ever meet. And so that has been thrilling in itself. And a few of them have even become my friends, so that's especially gratifying. But at IPNC, there are these seminars and these tastings in which you're comparing different kinds of things, and you really do learn a lot about how wine is made and how it can vary based on where it's made, and really, well, for example, you may have heard about this elsewhere, but there's a group of winemakers who have taken grapes from the same vineyard, and each of them has made wine using his or her own method, and then they'll have seminars in which people will blind taste these wines and try to guess which winemaker made the wine, because they came from the same vineyard, they're the same grapes. But Steve Derner at Christum makes his wine rather differently than Lynn Penner-Ash does, and so they talk about what it is that makes this wine so different, and it is quite different. That's educational, and it's fascinating to hear. And these people are passionate about why they do what they do. They don't exactly argue with each other, but they tease each other about what might be the better way to do it. So that part of this has been fun for me. And then finally, I guess I would say I've made friends among some of the people who come here year after year as consumers. People from Chicago, people from Virginia, people from Massachusetts and Connecticut, people who have gotten to know Linfield through IPNC and who have become my personal friends as well. And yes, we share an interest in wine, but they're interesting people in many ways. And so in that respect, it's been quite satisfying for me.
Do you have a memorable IPNC story that you can share with us from your years of going to IPNC?
Well, there are a number of stories, I think. I think that the one I will mention is replicated periodically, but the first time that I saw this happen, it just blew my mind. There's a relatively famous American winemaker named Jim Clendenin who founded Au Bon Clement, which is a winery in California. It was one of the first Californian wineries to really make very, very good Pinot Noir. Jim is larger than life. And he came here in 2006 as one of the visiting winemakers. He had been here a number of times before, and in fact he's coming again this year for the 25th anniversary. But it was at the Salmon Bake, fairly late at night. People had initially been eating their meal and drinking the wine that had been provided, but one of the traditions at the Salmon Bake is that everyone will bring one or two of his or her best wines to share and to pass around. And so the wine actually gets better as the night goes on. Of course, there are probably multiple reasons for that, but somebody said, you've got to see what's going on over at Clendenin's table. And so I walked back into the darkest corner of the oak grove, and there was Jim sitting at this long table surrounded by bottles. And he had glasses in both hands, and people were pouring things for him, and he would taste what was in the glass and close his eyes and say, Chateau Latour, 1985. And then he would take another glass and he would say, Tignanello, 1995. And he was nailing one after another. It was just an amazing thing to behold. Now, I've since learned that he is famous for doing this, and he's done it on a number of occasions, and I hope and expect he will do it here again this year. If he does, though, I'm going to be there earlier than I was last time, because there are some wonderful things being poured, and people are bringing things back there because they want to sort of show off, I think. But that was very memorable for me.
Is there any last thing you'd like to talk about in terms of Linfield's relationship to IPNC?
I think that we are blessed by our location. I think that IPNC is one of the best examples of how we are blessed, but it's only one of them. And I think that going forward, we have the potential to do even more, not only with IPNC, but also with the wine industry and with the other remarkable opportunities that are afforded to us in the Northwest. And so I'm just very proud that the International Pinot Noir celebration is at Linfield. We've just signed another long-term contract to assure that they will continue to be here for some time. And I'm very excited about our prospects for the future.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.